Associate Professor Walter Theseira.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, this bill will amend the Road Traffic Act to further improve safety by enhancing criminal penalties to deter irresponsible driving. Singapore is one of the safest countries for road travel. In the 2018 Global Status Report on Road Safety, the World Health Organization reported that the average global road traffic fatality rate per 100,000 people was 18.2 in 2016. Singapore's fatality rate was 2.51 in 2016 and has since improved to 2.20 in 2018. We do have some gaps, such as our policies allowing carriage of passengers in the cargo space in goods vehicles and our new vehicle standards which do not require the latest electronic safety advances such as electronic stability control. Many of these advances are mandated in the US and European Union. But overall, we compare well in road safety even when compared to highly developed countries. A key part of maintaining road traffic safety is how we manage routine traffic offences. Sir, in 2018, the Singapore Police Force reported 156,157 cases of speeding violations and 53,910 cases of red light violations. The vast majority of these offences will have been dealt with by composition offer or fine penalty. Fines are an important part of our road traffic safety system. As part of the same review that led to this bill's amendments to the Road Traffic Act, traffic offence fines were recently revised in April 2019. This was the first review in nearly 20 years. Unsurprisingly, because incomes have gone up since then, fines were raised across the board with the steepest increases for the most severe offences. I wish to discuss two issues. First, can we design an optimal traffic fine schedule based on evidence and economic principles? And second, can we improve equity and efficiency by implementing fines that step up linked to the income or wealth of the offender? The economic principle for fine setting, as laid out in 1974 by the Nobel Prize-winning economist Gary Becker, is that the expected fine, the penalty adjusted by the probability of being caught, should equal the social cost caused by the offence. The reason is that many crimes are actions which have private benefits but which produce external social costs. Consider speeding on the roads. We speed because we enjoy a private benefit from getting to the destination faster or because we enjoy driving faster. But because we are speeding, we impose an external social cost on others from the increased accident risk. There is also the risk of injury to the speeding driver, but that is a private cost. The optimal fine makes the potential speeder realize that if they speed, they must pay the external social cost of doing so, which then deters them from speeding. Applying this principle of aligning fines to the marginal social cost is quite difficult in practice. We know that speeding is dangerous, but I don't think any country systematically quantifies the cost of speeding and links these costs to fines. One complication is that the relationship between speed and the risk of injury and death is non-linear and it increases sharply with speed. In the report I referenced earlier, the World Health Organization states that in general, a 1% increase in mean speed produces a 4% increase in the fatal crash risk and a 3% increase in a serious crash risk. Now, this means that optimal fines should increase significantly as the rate of excess speed increases. Do we reflect this principle in our fine schedule for speeding? Exceeding the road speed limit by 31 to 40 kilometers per hour carries double the fine in demerit points at $300 and 8 demerit points, then exceeding the speed limit by 1 to 20 kilometers per hour does at $150 and 4 demerit points. An evidence-based optimal fine setting policy would examine whether the harm caused by speeding 31 to 40 kilometers per hour above the limit is in fact larger than double that of speeding only by 1 to 20 kilometers per hour. The fines and demerit points should be revised upwards according to the actual risk. It would be useful if the Ministry could publish the results of any studies conducted that would show the evidence basis for our recent revisions to the fine schedule. A second issue with setting optimal fines is that motorists differ greatly in their income and wealth. However, fines are generally equal when different motorists commit the same offense, which creates a problem. A fine that is large enough to be meaningful and appropriate to punish the average motorist may be too large for lower-income motorists and too small for the richest motorists. This is an obvious limitation to optimal fines in practice. Fines don't work if they are so large that people can't pay, and fines also don't work if they are not meaningful deterrents. Elected members know that many appeals at Meet the People sessions are for traffic and parking offences. In most cases, the resident admits to committing the offence, but they appeal for leniency because the fines will cause them financial hardship. This creates a challenge when we want to increase fines to appropriately deter unsafe driving. Sir, our vocational drivers, our taxi drivers, private hire drivers, delivery drivers, and so on, they are generally low to middle income earners. While all motorists should drive safely, we must be mindful that a significant penalty for the average private car driver is actually an immense sum for the vocational driver. There is evidence that fines do deter unsafe driving and that fines have price effects. That is, higher fines are more effective at deterring unsafe driving as long as the driver feels the pinch from paying the fine. In a study by Bai Lan and Sakadot, published in the Journal of Law and Economics in 2004, the authors studied what happened after Israel raised the fine for red light violations by 150% in 1996. The authors had demographic data of drivers which allowed them to understand which groups of motorists change behavior more. Overall, red light violations in Israel fell by 30% after the fine was increased. But what is interesting is who was affected more. Young drivers, those aged under 30, were more than twice as likely as older drivers to reduce offending, although young drivers offend more to begin with. And drivers with newer cars were both more likely to run red lights, and they were less responsive to the fine increase. I interpret these results as supportive of the theory that fines do deter unsafe driving, and moreover, the deterrent effect of fines depends on the income or wealth of the offender. Richer offenders simply feel the pinch of a fine less. One way of ensuring that fines have the appropriate deterrent effect while keeping the financial impact on vocational drivers in mind is to calibrate fines based on the income or wealth of the offending motorist. In 2015, the New York Times reported that a businessman in Finland received a fine of 54,024 euros for exceeding the speed limit by traveling 64 miles per hour in a 50-mile-per-hour zone. Not all speeders in Finland pay so much. A more typical motorist would have paid only 345 euros for the same offense. The reason why the unfortunate businessman paid so much is that he was one of Finland's highest income earners. Speeding is an offense which is punishable by day fines in Finland. A similar day fine system is in use in a number of countries, mostly Scandinavian. The legal history is that a fine represents a payment in lieu of jail, and being locked up is more costly for a high-income offender because the lost income is larger. So the fine paid per day of jail should be scaled to income. The Finnish businessman's speeding offense was rated at 8 days' worth of fines, and given his high income, this worked out to 54,024 euros. Now, in case anyone is thinking I am suggesting we charge 50,000 Singapore dollars speeding fines, let me state for the record, I think this is probably too high even for a fine city. But we could revise our traffic fine penalty system to ensure that fines appropriately deter high-income motorists while being fair and reasonable for lower-income motorists. One practical way of doing so might be to scale the traffic fine based on the offending vehicle's open market value for privately owned passenger cars. These form most of the vehicles on the road, and differences in the income of drivers of private cars can be very large in Singapore. I think it reasonable to assume that the driver of a large luxury car is able to pay more than one driving a cheaper vehicle, and they would likely regard the demerit points and other consequences of an offence as far more serious than the fine itself. In fact, insofar as many luxury cars are marketed as safer than less well-equipped cars, there's even more reason to increase the optimal fine as a deterrent, since the perceived risk of injury to the driver themselves will be lower and luxury car drivers may be more inclined to speed. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Singapore's road traffic safety standards will be improved by this bill. But there is room for improvement in how we design our fine penalty system, which is a major component of road safety. We should examine the evidence basis behind the social cost of unsafe driving and design fines, particularly for higher speeds, to reflect the actual risk more appropriately. We can also improve equity and efficiency by calibrating fines according to the income or wealth of the offending motorist. As road traffic safety is an evolving problem, I hope the government will study these issues when planning the next revision of the Road Traffic Act. I support the bill.